Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Augusta Baker Storytelling Experience, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Programming for Children of all ages, otherwise known as AB Kids. I am Valerie Birdfort. My pronouns are she, her. I'm an instructor for the iSchool at the University of South Carolina, where I teach courses in children's literature, school libraries, and library programming. In addition, I am the coordinator of Cocky's Reading Express. I'm so glad you're here. Feel free to use the chat and let us know where you're joining us from. We'd also love to know if there's any classrooms or homeschoolers watching today. This series is named in honor of Augusta Braxton Baker, who was the first African-American coordinator of children's services within the New York Public Library system. She worked at New York Public Library for 37 years and then came to South Carolina, where she served as the library school storyteller in residence for 14 years. Before we get started, a few reminders. We are recording today's session. Please make sure you are on mute unless you have a question or if you've been asked to unmute by the speaker. Feel free to participate as much as you'd like in the chat. Our graduate assistant, Sierra Harris, and I will both be moderating the chat. And feel free to use the reactions in your Zoom. As mentioned, today's program is part of a series. Please visit the AB Kids website to register for future sessions and to explore all of the other Baker programming available to you. And now for our speaker. Jarrett Dapier is a librarian, drummer, and writer for children and teens. His first picture book, Mr. Watson's Chickens, illustrated by Andrea Zurumi and published by Chronicle Books, received multiple starred reviews and was chosen by NPR as one of the best books of 2021. His picture book, Jazz for Lunch, also published in 2021, received a starred review in Kirkus and was a finalist for the Ezra Jack Keats Awards in Writing and Illustration. His latest picture book, The Most Haunted House in America, illustrated by Lee Gatlin and published by Abram Books. Next year, he has a graphic novel coming out for teens, Wake Now in the Fire, illustrated by AJ Dungo, and it will be published by Chronicle Books. He lives in Evanston, Illinois with his family, and we are so excited he is here. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this for months and months. As you just heard, I am the author of the book, the new book, The Most Haunted House in America. And it came out 2 months ago on August 2nd. And I am so happy to be here to share it with you because it's October. And what happens at the end of October? Halloween. And this is a Halloween story. It's a Halloween story, but with a twist. Some people say that kids and adults only like to read Halloween stories or ghost stories or horror stories during October, because that's Halloween month, and that's the only time that people want to read those kinds of books. But if you're like me, then you don't agree with that at all, because I love to read books about ghosts and spiders and skeletons all year long. I like to watch movies about them all year long, and it doesn't matter that the leaves might be changing and falling off the trees. To me, Halloween stories or ghost stories in October are the same to me as ghost stories and spider stories in July. So I don't agree that people only want these books then. So I wrote a book that actually is both set at Halloween, but is also about something bigger than just the event of Halloween. And if you notice on the front here, some of you might already noticed this, and you might already know what it is, but if you don't, sometimes people look at that and they go, oh, that's a museum. It is not a museum, although it is a little bit like a museum because there's lots of historical artifacts, lots of portraits, lots of amazing pieces of American history inside it, and people are allowed to visit it. But it is not a museum, it is the White House. The White House, where the president lives, the president and the first family. So somebody tell me who the president is. I can't actually hear you, so I'm just going to give you a minute to answer wherever you are. If you said President Joe Biden, you are correct. President Joe Biden is our president today, and he is married to a woman named Jill Biden, called the First Lady of the United States. Typically, the first family, the president, often his wife, and kids live in the White House. But wait a minute. This book is called The Most Haunted House in America, and it's about the White House. So that means President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden live in the most haunted house in America? What? Hang on a second. Has anybody ever heard this before? That the White House is the most haunted house in America? Because up until a couple of years ago, I had no idea. I've heard of haunted mansions in the town next door. I've heard of haunted old hospitals. I've heard of haunted factories and haunted streets, haunted rivers even, where ghost boats float. But the White House, the most famous house in America, is the most haunted house in America? Some people say so, and I'll tell you why. It's because over the last 150 years, since the Civil War, there have been more ghost sightings reported from visitors, overnight guests, presidents and their families, and staff members in the White House than any other house in America. So ghost experts and people who study paranormal activity like ghosts and spirits and phantoms, some of them say this is indeed the most haunted house in America. Which makes me wonder why anyone would want to be president. Unless you feel like I do, that maybe it'd be kind of fun to live in the most haunted house in America. This is the story of 3 skeleton drummers who are invited to play their drums at a special Halloween celebration held at the White House. And this Halloween celebration is based on a true story that occurred in 2009 when the First Lady, at that time, it was not Jill Biden, it was a very wonderful and important person named Michelle Obama. Michelle Obama hosted and dreamed up this beautiful night of community fun and enchantment that took place at the White House. And this story is set then. So these 3 skeleton drummers are invited to Michelle Obama's Halloween celebration. But after the trick-or-treating is through, they go into the White House, take a wrong turn, and run into a real problem, a creepy problem, something that makes them feel like they've got to get out. I think we should read it to find out what happens. What do you think? All right, let's do it. All I have to do, okay, so first of all, this book is written by me, Jarrett Dapier. I did not draw the pictures though. I wrote the words that you're gonna hear, but the pictures, the illustrations are by a man named Lee Gatlin. So these adorable skeletons and all the bats flying around and everything you see in the book are illustrated by Lee. So check out that back. This is the kind of illustration you're gonna see. The book is full of details of costumes and creatures and monsters galore. And this is a little preview that we show you on the back of the book, including that giant cat. See it? I want you to remember that giant cat because there's a story about that giant cat that comes from real life or unreal life, who knows? I am going to share my screen. I'm going to put this back here so everybody can see it. I'm going to share my screen so that I can tell you the story of the most haunted house in America. You ready? Let's do it. This is the one. Let's see if it'll actually expand. Here we go. Woo. Sierra, I was just wondering, what do you see on the screen when you look at it? Because I only ask because it's huge on my screen. And
So I don't see the whole thing. I see
Okay,
the top part.
so I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. I'm back. And I just need to fix that. Just 1 minute. Now I can share it. Isn't it funny when you listen to a story time on Zoom? If I were there with you, I wouldn't be going, how do I open this book? I don't know how to open this book. But here I am going, how do I open up my pictures from the book? Okay. Well, I think we're going to do it like this because I kind of like how big it looks, because there's a lot of details to get through. So let me just expand it and then we're going to go. All right. When you first open the book, you come upon this creepy scene, which is an old hollow tree with a mailbox. And the mailbox in this old creepy hollow tree, I'm going to see if I can get it down here and make it better. I'm sorry, I have a slow computer. And I've also never had this happen before. Sierra, is it still just half the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we've got this creepy old mailbox and the flag is up on the mailbox. And what does that mean? It means you've got mail. And when we go straight down to our cover page, there we go. Now it's looking normal. Okay, here's the cover page. I don't like how, I'm gonna try it like this. Why are you doing this? Okay, and that little skeleton says, we got a letter, we've got a letter. And don't forget to notice those little eyes in the tree stump. The Most Haunted House in America by Jarrett Dapier, illustrated by Lee Gatlin. Let's do this. It was late October. The moon was pale. Late in October, when it came by mail, a letter, a missive, a kind invitation to drum at the most haunted house in the nation. And if you look at that invitation being held in those bony hands, you'll notice it says, the First Lady of the United States of America requests the musical services of the Skeleton Drummers at a Halloween celebration on October 31st at the White House, North Lawn, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. Be there or be scared. Oh, the White House, the White House. You've heard of the place. The first couple's home, the president's base. But there's one more thing you might not know. The White House is haunted from top to toe. So there he goes running in with his letter, and the two other drummers are jamming out, and they stop what they're doing and what they're playing because they've got a special invitation. And immediately they get going. We're a little bit nervous, a little bit scared, but the Skeleton Drummers are always prepared. So come along, join us as we make our way to America's capital, where we'll play. And how do they get there? Well, of course, they go down the well, down into a tunnel that leads naturally to Washington, D.C., the underground bone network. Clearly, because as you see underneath them, dinosaur fossils that they didn't even know were there. So it's already Halloween. They get there the next morning and we rise from the earth and we clack our bones, climb on the cart and tap double stroke tones, a drum rig contraption of metal and tin, perfectly built for a Halloween din. We skeletons boom, we skeletons bang, break drums and cymbals and metal go clang. We blast beats on buckets and one big old gong. Children in costumes are drawn to our song. And this is what I'm talking about with Lee's illustrations. Just an endless amount of costumes and kids wearing different things. And every time I read this book, even though I wrote it, I see someone new that I hadn't noticed before. So the other day I was reading it and I saw the boy on the bottom in the duck suit. I'd never seen that boy before, even though I've looked at these illustrations over and over. It's almost like there's too much for your eye to see at one time. So when you read the book, when you hold it in your lap or you're being read to by one of your loved ones or a caregiver, you can look at the illustrations over and over and always find something new. Okay, what's the new thing that I just saw? I've never seen this bat playing the cowbell. I love it. And the amount of things to look at goes on because the trick-or-treating goes on into the night. Wizards and witches and robots and more line up the drive and step up to the door. Thousands of children, their dads and their moms, dance to the beat as we thrash on the toms. Ghost notes, a rim click, then rat my cue. Our bass drum makes thunder, a hullabaloo. The first couple grins as kids hoist their sacks, dropping in cookies and candies and snacks. Check out the first couple. Like I said, this is First Lady Obama's Halloween celebration. And so who have you got to have there? President Obama with First Lady Michelle Obama. And they're handing out cookies and candies and snacks, which historically is a little inaccurate because they didn't actually hand out candy in 2009 when they did this. First Lady Obama said candy is unhealthy, and so they're not handing it out because they figured all the kids and families come in there, they would get enough candy that Halloween. So they had the White House kitchen make special yummy treats that were good, but also nutritious. Like I said, you can keep looking through and see amazing, amazing illustrations throughout. There's a Frankenstein boy, and oh, there's another bird boy. I love it. Oh, and Giraffe Boy. Giraffe Boy or Giraffe Guy comes back a couple times. I never noticed that he was in this picture. A clink and a shake in the dim haunted gloam. We skeletons rock the president's home. 1,000-pound pumpkin aglow in the gloom. We howl as we drum a soundtrack of doom. So they're howling, they're yelling, they're going wild. It is a playful, amazing, joyful time. Whenever I read this, I like to sort of imagine in my head the sound of beats as it goes on. So I've got a clink and a shake in the dim haunted gloom. We skeletons rock the president's home. And it just goes on because that's sort of how I work. I always hear a beat in my head and I try to write along to it. All right, trick-or-treating is done. Time to go in the White House. Then, when the trick-or-treating is through, the first couple leads our skeleton crew into the house where the dream party moves to celebrate more to the sound of our grooves. But inside the doors, something's not right. A chill in the air and a prickle of fright grabs hold of our band. Our sticks start to shake. Our bones start to shudder, then rattle, then quake. So, do you remember I told you about the big kitty on the back of the book? Look who's here down in the bottom. It's the same cat, but kind of regular sized cat, looking around the corner, but if you'll notice, no one is looking directly at the cat. That's an important detail, and I'll tell you why in a few pages. But one thing that I want to point out, do you see these words here like shake and shudder and rattle and quake? They're bigger than the words around them. They're sort of askew and slanted, and they just pop out of the off of the page in a way. And the reason those look like that is because I wanted to give readers a clue about how to read those words. So anytime that you see in a book, or oftentimes when you see a word in a book that sort of pops out, it's all caps, it's a different color, it's sort of slanted and bold, it usually means the writer is giving you a clue about how it should sound in your head, or how it should sound when you're reading it out loud. And that's That's exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted it to sound like this when you read it. A chill in the air and a prickle of fright grabs hold of our band. Our sticks start to shake, our bones start to shudder, then rattle, then quake. Do you hear how those pop? That's called emphasis. And good readers always keep an eye while they're reading on whether or not the words look different or there are clues in the words and the writing and how they look that will tell you how it should sound. And what's cool about that is when you really pay attention to those clues, it can help you understand what you're reading more. And so I love to put those in also because I'm a drummer. And so they're also sort of like accents or cymbal crashes or a drum fill that you would put in at the end of a measure or at the end of a verse or chorus in a song. We march and we tramp, we strike at our snares. We're lured by the soft, ghostly music upstairs. We enter a red room, swarming with souls. They shimmer and sway to our haunted drum rolls. They twirl and they waltz. They float and they flip. The lights all go dark. Our grip starts to slip. Two snakes slither by. Let's hope they don't bite. We back slowly out and keep out of sight. This room is a real room in the White House, the Red Room. And most people think that it's actually a pretty comfy room and that they like it a lot. But it's one of the rooms where ghosts have been seen the most throughout the years. Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, once held a special ceremony in the Red Room called a seance, where she tried to talk to the dead, the ghosts of people who weren't living, through this special ceremony. And she did it in the Red Room. So the history of this room is a little creepy. So the skeleton drummers they're out of there. Back in the hall, more spirits arrive. They step out of painting like something alive. Abe Lincoln appears in his stovepipe hat, scratching the chin of a giant-sized cat. Okay, there's the cat again. And now the cat is giant. What is going on? A little story. In Washington, D.C., people claim there is a cat that is regular size that wanders around the streets, up and down, near the White House, all around the Capitol, wherever you go. And the cat can come out of nowhere. And if you see the cat out of the corner of your eye, it's just a regular sized little kitty. But if you look right at the cat, it grows to 10 times its size, freaking people out and sending them running. The cat is supposed to be orange, like a orange tabby cat, orange marmalade cat. The illustrator decided to make it a black cat with yellow and orange eyes. Let's keep going, because everywhere they turn now, there's something that freaks them out. A knock at the door rings in the wings. A one-legged rooster hops in and sings, "Beware of this place. You shouldn't have come." A barn owl swoops, its wings beat a thrum. A knock again at the door down below. We drum and pretend it's just part of the show. We're not scared a bit. That raccoon's a fake. Everything's fine. Try some of the cake. A violin shrieks in the attic above. We trip and we bump and we turn and we shove. We knock our thick skulls. We sprint and we fall and we hit a dead end. The terror ball. Oh dear. All right, here's another thing good, strong, active readers do. They make predictions. So you've heard of a ball, you've heard of a dance, celebration that's fancy, sort of fancy pants. This is a ball, but it's the terror ball. And to me, I'm looking for clues. Their faces look truly shocked and like they've sort of hit the brakes as they were running into the room. So they're going like, dig, 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 and then the terror ball. What kind of creatures do you think we're going to see in the terror ball? Think about it. Personally, when I see those spider webs, I start to think this is going to be a room full of spiders, because that's terrifying. Maybe spiders and snakes, more ghosts, zombies. There are probably going to be zombies. What do you think's going to be there? Let's see if you're right. The dead and the living together at last. Figures appear right out of the past. Abigail Adams, Abe Lincoln's son, a freak called the Thing. Everyone run! So that's the Thing right there. And I imagine that's maybe what brought them to a halt when they came running up to the doorway. It is an eyeball covered in eyeballs, which it also looks like its legs and arms are the muscles that surround the eyeballs. I don't know, but I understand why one of our skeleton drummer buddies is finally too freaked out to remain and is probably going to go running through the wall. Other things that you can notice at the terror ball, the alligator, the ghost alligator that is sort of swarming around the feet of the Thing, this little bear, a pig, the raccoon again, Abigail Adams, who was the wife of John Adams, the second president of the United States, and of course, our bat friends. But they've got to get out of this place if it's the last thing they ever do. We flee through the gates out into the dark. With howls and yelps, we stomp through the park. We haunt the mall with our rhythms all night. Skeleton drummers, a melee of fright. So there they go, running out of the White House. And they end up at this place where the Washington Monument is, which is actually pretty close to the White House. You just run behind the White House. Well, you have to go around the White House, but you end up in this place called the National Mall. The National Mall is a national park, kind of in the center of Washington, D.C. And it's a place where there's this place called the Reflecting Pool, which is this beautiful, long stretching pond and lake that many historical and beautiful protests and celebratory events have happened there. The famous I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King, when he spoke, and Congressman John Lewis spoke, and a whole bunch of other people before them. That happened right there. But they are parading through the mall all night, howling and playing the drums and having an incredible Halloween celebration and festival in the national park. They end up, as you can see up here, at the Abraham Lincoln Monument. And if you notice, Abraham Lincoln ghost down here is saying hi to Abraham Lincoln, the sculpture. Hi, Abe. Hey, Abe. But all good things must come to an end. The sun is rising. And I bet everybody's a little tired. We creatures all revel and drum till the dawn, then wearily creep back into the lawn, climbing deep underground for a whole year to rest. Thank you, First Lady. This night was the best. There's First Lady Michelle Obama saying bye-bye to the skeleton drummers as they go home for a whole year to rest. Hopefully, to be invited next year to play at the White House again. Oh, and it looks like the kitty's going with them. That's the end of the story, but it's not the end of the book. So I wrote this author's note, and I tried to make it not too long, but there was a lot to talk about because I wanted to talk to the reader about all of the ghosts that have been seen over the years in the White House. Some of them historical famous figures, and some creatures and figures that no one knew who or what they were. So in this author's note, I write about that history. I also write about some of the pets that the president's first families have kept, because over the years, so many animals have either lived in the White House or on the White House grounds. Not just cats and dogs, but Calvin Coolidge had a raccoon named Rebecca. Abraham Lincoln had ponies, and other presidents had alligators, bears, the one-legged rooster. The one-legged rooster actually is a creature that people saw, that I don't know if a one-legged rooster ever lived at the White House, but a one-legged rooster has been seen around the White House, sort of like a creature, like a ghost of a one-legged rooster. And there is, I tell the story of the Thing. So the Thing was not actually an eyeball covered in eyeballs. The Thing was the ghost of a 15-year-old boy who was seen by the staff, the caretakers, and the administrative workers of President Taft. So President Taft, who was president over 100 years ago, President Taft, during the time he was in the White House, everybody was terrified of the Thing. They kept seeing this boy walking around and scaring the wits out of people, like showing up in doorways. They'd open up a closet, there would be the boy. So everybody was talking about it. And it got to be so much that President Taft finally issued an order to everyone in the White House that you are not to talk about the Thing ever again. And if he hears anyone talking about the Thing, you're fired. So everybody tried to keep it down, tried to whisper, maybe not talk about it so much, because President Taft said that is silly and we have important presidential business to do. Well, it turns out that after President Taft died, historians reading his letters discovered that President Taft said that because he was actually really scared of the Thing. It's true. He wrote to somebody in a letter that everybody keeps talking about this thing, the Thing, and I don't like it at all. It gives me shivers and shudders. I don't know. I need to look up exactly what it was that he wrote, but he confessed that the Thing really scared him. So he wants everybody to stop scaring him. But he made it seem like, this is just silly. I don't believe in ghosts. Stop talking about it or you're fired, and tried to be, tough guy. But like all humans, he felt scared. He felt afraid. He just was maybe he wasn't brave enough to say, I'm actually scared. Could you stop talking about it? Or maybe as everybody's boss, he felt like he couldn't say that. I don't know. But I think it's really funny that he was afraid. Yeah, so in 2009, Michelle Obama did hold this, a Halloween celebration, just like this one, that had a lot of, this shares a lot of details with what happened that day. And I made up a lot of other stuff. But I was actually invited to play the drums at the White House at that celebration, dressed as a skeleton drummer. And I went, and this is a picture of me playing the drums with two drummer buddies at the White House in 2009. And that's me lit up on the far right there. They just happened to snap a picture, the newspapers happened to snap a picture when I was standing in the light. And it's one of the only one that exists. It is the only one that I've ever been able to find of the skeleton drummers. And the little bat on the side here says, look, there's Jarrett. I'm very proud of this photo. I really love it. And I just feel so lucky that it exists, because otherwise, who would know whether or not I was actually there? I was, though. And so what happened was, we played the drums for 2.5 hours while 2,500 kids and their grown-ups trick-or-treated at the White House. So they came up the drive and they got to trick-or-treat at the front door, and President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama were there, and all of these staff members who worked for President Obama dressed up in amazing costumes. And it was this beautiful celebration and joyful joyful night. When kids walked up to the door and got their snacks, they would then sort of talk to First Lady Obama, then they were sort of sent down the other way because the driveway goes in a half circle. And so they would walk past the front door, and they were allowed to sort of just slowly linger on the grounds, and they would walk right past us where we were drumming. And one of my favorite memories of drumming that night is looking up while we were playing and seeing a woman, and she's holding a baby, and she's got what looks like maybe a first grader and a preschooler with her, and they're all dancing to the beat. And it was just this incredible gathering of performers and smiling people and families on the grounds of the White House. And these weren't like, you know, movie stars, although there were movie stars there with the president. These were people from the neighborhood. These were local Washington, D.C. school children and their families coming on the grounds of the White House. The gates were open to them, and they got to do this for 2.5 hours. And I got to see it all. And I am just going to look really quickly at the chat to see if anybody had any questions, but I definitely have some time in a little bit for some more questions, but I just see that these are, oh yeah, Haunted Mansion at Disney World. Oh dear, The Shining. I hope this book doesn't remind anyone of The Shining. Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit more about this event, because to me, it's important in really, it's not just a cool story. To me, it is an important event that ties into the promise of equality and democracy and the values that our country has stated it lives by and has never really lived up to. Those values have never been realized and never been fully achieved. But this event to me shows me, and I hope after I talk a little bit can show you, how we can still achieve the things that this country was founded on but has never achieved through sharing public spaces and being together as a community in different places, especially one that's very important to me, the library. So I'm going to share my screen again because I want to talk about that night and show you some things. Where is it? There it is. All right. So thank you for listening. That little guy on the side is a character sketch that was sent to me by Lee when he was coming up with how he thought the skeletons should look. And I loved him. I loved his scarf, and I just immediately felt happy seeing him. So I love that guy. That's why I put him right here. As you heard in my introduction, I'm also the author of 2 other books, Mr. Watson's Chickens and Jazz for Lunch. Thank you, Valerie. Valerie says, great books. Mr. Watson's Chickens and Jazz for Lunch, I mentioned them here, not just because I wrote them, but because of 2 things. All 3 of my books have to do with music and the joy and togetherness that music brings to people. So in Mr. Watson's Chickens, it's a story of 2 guys who have way too many chickens living in their house, 456 to be exact. And the chickens have taken over and caused too much chaos. There are musician chickens, circus chickens, dancer chickens, baker chickens, chickens hanging out in the bathtub, chickens reading comics on the toilet, chickens flying kites. It never ends. And finally, they have to figure out, what are we going to do with all these chickens? And it leads them to a big community gathering called a fair. I'm sure a lot of you have been to a fair or have heard of a fair, and they think maybe we can go find a new home for these chickens with someone who's at the fair. And one of the chickens is a musical chicken named Aunt Agnes. She's like, kind of sees herself as a diva and a star. She's a pop star. And she leads the chickens in big choral songs and big rousing numbers, almost like second line bands in New Orleans. They cause a lot of chaos and have a lot of fun. And the way that the music brings people together and attracts them sort of leads to how things get solved. And then Jazz for Lunch is a story of a boy who's with his auntie, and she takes him to a jazz club to hear her favorite music. And it's a jazz club that has a special jazz performance time during lunch. They go in, he is overcome with awe and amazement at the sound of the jazz coming off and out of the instruments on stage. And he also smells the amazing scents coming from the kitchen, and the work of the people in the kitchen and the work of the musicians on stage all sort of mixed together. And then the next day, Auntie Nina and Junior, the boy, meet back at her apartment where they cook together, listen to jazz, and they find that the jazz music leads them to it inspires them to improvise, to make up new dishes and sort of just get creative in the kitchen, making up like new dishes to see how they taste, and basically making a feast. And it shows sort of how music and jazz and creativity and food and togetherness all are one thing. They're all of a piece. It's not like they're cut off from each other. They flow together. Just like the greatest things, the greatest art and the greatest sort of events in history have these qualities, you know, everybody bringing their gifts and flowing together and sharing space. And that also occurs in Jazz for Lunch. So in her book, Becoming, Michelle Obama tells the story of how and why she created this night of enchantment and joy at the White House. And it's a funny story because she proposed in 2009 to the president, I want to host a huge trick-or-treating celebration for the children of Washington, D.C., and military families and their children, and the White House staff and their children. And I want to do it this year on Halloween. And the president and his staff said, no. She said, why? And they said, it'll look too silly. Now, some of you, a lot of you maybe, weren't alive in 2009 and don't know that at that time, a lot of people were struggling. There weren't a lot of jobs. A lot of people had lost their jobs, and people were struggling to find food. People were struggling to make the rent. The nation was really hurting. And the president said, we can't do this because it will make us look like we're just messing around while everyone else is hurting. And First Lady Obama said, no, it's going to be a night of community and joy and service to the families of Washington, D.C. from us. It's going to be a night of imagination and creativity, and will bring smiles to children's faces. That's not messing around. And they said, no. She could not believe the obstacle that they were putting up in her path. She could not believe that they could not see what she sees, which is that this is a beautiful idea and can only be a good thing. So she didn't let it go. Like many powerful women who know what they're doing, she didn't let it go, and she kept bringing it up and kept requesting it and kept saying, we're going to do this, until finally the president and his staff said, fine. And they agreed to do it. And not only did they agree to do it, many of them got really into it, putting on costumes that were super professional and super magical and wonderful. And the night went off really beautifully. So like I said, I was there October 31st, 2009. And if you were walking by, you would see the White House was lit up like a giant pumpkin. It was really cool. And First Lady Obama in the book says specifically that her goals for hosting this is a night of community, collective joy, enchantment, inclusion. Okay. You know, people look at the White House and they think, oh, that is not a place for me. That's like the ultimate gated community. You know, the richest of the rich go in there, and the most privileged, particularly white privilege, often go in there, and those gates are shut to me. She said, nope, we're opening the gates. And little girls, boys, and in between, they are coming in, and I want to meet them and I want to meet their families. And so I love this picture because I can't tell if they're waving or about to high five, but I just love the look that you can sense on the little person's face and on Michelle Obama's face. And she said she wanted a night of imagination and fun because everybody deserves that. Let's see. There we go. So when I looked around while I was drumming, I saw what the kids and their families were seeing. I saw other performers from all over the nation that were also invited to ply their trade, to be there to perform. And one of them was this beautiful butterfly fairy who walked around in this giant bubble like a snow globe. And she walked slowly across the front lawn right there throughout the afternoon. And it truly looked like something from a dream. So I'd be drumming there. We're playing paint cans and gas cans and gongs and floor toms and bass drums and more. And I look up and there's this beautiful butterfly fairy walking around in slow motion. And then if you look to the right there were performers on stilts dressed like trees who towered over the trick-or-treaters and walked amongst them. You'll also notice there was R2-D2 from Star Wars. You can also see C-3PO's legs right there, because there were White House staff members in completely professional Star Wars costumes that I'm pretty sure they borrowed or rented from Lucasfilm, the people who made the movie. Another one of my favorite photos, President Obama and this little guy who I think is Spider-Man, sharing a moment of happiness and like connection. Chewbacca was there. Like I said, there's Stormtrooper. I didn't get a photo, but there was also Darth Vader. And you'll notice, and First Lady Obama says this in the book, everybody got into the spirit. My mom, who's standing right next to her, dressed in an orange vest like a pumpkin. I wore a cheetah costume, and everyone was into it except for Barack, who wore a lame dad sweater. As you can see, there he is in his lame dad sweater, but everyone else was into it. Hold on a sec. Okay. So this is from earlier in the afternoon. On the left there's again President Obama sharing a moment, and I love the little guy's face right down there. It looks like he's dressed up as a college graduate, and he's looking up at him. And I have no idea what he's thinking, but I like to sort of wonder what it is he's thinking while he looks up at this great guy. Oh, and there's my favorite picture again. So here we are. Hold on. Here we are, the Skeleton Drummers. We're playing and playing. People are dancing. And so one thing that some people don't know is that the White House has often been called, or at least it was called 100+ years ago, the People's House. The idea was that the President of the United States, the people who work for that person, they are working for the people, us, the people who live in this nation, the people who work in this nation, the people who vote, the people who don't vote, and the people who make the nation what it is. And so if the president works for us, the people, then the house that the president lives in is the people's house. And early on in the history of the White House, the presidents would, in a way, abide. They would sort of cooperate with this idea by opening up the doors to the White House to anybody who wanted to come in and wanted to talk to the president. And so from very early in the history of the White House, especially on New Year's Eve, presidents throughout the year would a couple times do this. But the amazing thing is that the White House grounds, so like the driveway, the yards and everything, those were open to the people too. So even if the White House was closed, it was like, not New Year's Eve and it was another time, people always gathered around the White House to try and get a glimpse of the president, try to find a time to talk to the president. But the president would open up the doors to people who wanted to come. And sometimes there were 7,000 to 10,000 people that would show up on a New Year's Eve trying to get into the White House. Part of it was they wanted to see the White House. Part of it was they wanted to talk to the president. And what's incredible about this is it was an opportunity for people who disagreed with the president to come face to face with the president to say, this is what I think, and this is what I think you're doing wrong. Now, anybody scrutinizing and looking at this painting, so this is a painting that was capturing one of Abraham Lincoln's New Year's Eve people parties. And you'll notice all white faces, right? So that's the catch here, is that it may have been the people's house, but most presidents only let in white people. And for the majority, it was white men only. What was exceptional about Abraham Lincoln is on his final New Year's Eve party, about 7,000 people tried to get in. And of those 7,000, there were 100 plus African Americans who were invited into the White House and got to speak with him one-on-one. And these were, doctors, these were workers of all, levels and backgrounds and, wealth levels. And they were able to come in. And of course, the white newspaper owners, they did a lot of making fun of Abraham Lincoln for this. But in history, it was one of the first times that the people, like the Night of the People, actually included people who weren't white. And I was really, really inspired to write. I was inspired to write the Most Haunted House in America originally when I read Michelle Obama's story about trying to create a night of community, right? I read her story and I thought, yes, she is living within the spirit of what not only the nation's capital should be driven by, but what all our towns and communities and cities should be driven by, which is a spirit of inclusion, a spirit of seeing and recognizing that the American people are lots of different colors, are lots of different experiences, lots of different beliefs, and all of them equal and all of them deserving of being heard, but also all of them deserving of being together and experiencing joy and just being out together. And so to me, this is why I called it Michelle Obama's, or the First Lady's Palace for the People. So there's this guy named Andrew Carnegie, and Andrew Carnegie was this super, super rich guy who believed that one of the most important things he could do with his money is build libraries all over the country. And he believed that libraries were, in his words, palaces for the people. And it became sort of a term that this guy who wrote this book, Eric Kleinenberg, uses to describe not just libraries, but parks, public swimming pools, rec centers, anywhere, festival grounds, fairgrounds, union halls, anywhere where people can gather together outside of their homes and be together. And most importantly, places where people of all backgrounds, of all colors, of all beliefs could be together at once. And he says in the book, this is something that democracy and an equal, peaceful society absolutely depends on. It depends on people learning to respect each other by sharing space together. That doesn't mean they necessarily even interact. You go to a public park or you go to a football game, and there are people, there are so many different people there. And the thing is, they're all sharing a common interest. And when you see each other and interact with each other at the hot dog stand, or interact with each other when you're playing Frisbee in the park, or, you know, kicking a ball and somebody kicks it back to you, families together, there is this sort of shared sense that we're all in this together. This is a place for us, and all of us deserve it. And so what grows in people is the idea that that person who might have a completely different experience than me is in many ways also not like, or is in many ways just like me. They deserve safety and a peaceful life and a healthy community and equality and access to voting and so many other good things that make America strong. And so I wanted to write this book because I thought that's what Michelle Obama was doing. Michelle Obama was saying, let the people come in and let's meet them and talk with them and laugh with them. And the reason I was so passionate about it is because I believe that our public libraries are also people's houses. This is a picture from an event that I created at Skokie Public Library here in Skokie, Illinois, which is just outside Chicago. And this was a comics festival. I think it was 2019. Yeah. And it was attended by hundreds and hundreds of children, grown-ups on their own, grown-ups with kids, caregivers. I mean, it was everybody of all ages, and it was hundreds and hundreds of people from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock. We had Black Panther there, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, people lined up, and you can see people who look differently. They look different from one another. They're all lining up to take photos with the superheroes. There were events all throughout the children's room, including decorate your own cape, decorate your own mask, face painting. Lots and lots of families lined up for that. We had authors there, including a graphic novelist who wrote, Svetlana Chimakova, who wrote the books Awkward and Brave. We filled up the auditorium. Comics brought everyone together. Marvel superheroes brought everyone together. And I can confirm, because Skokie, Illinois has over 85 languages spoken. People live there from all over the world. Recent arrivals who are immigrants who chose to move there, refugees who had to get out of their country and were able to land in Skokie. People from all over the world who speak every language. They all gather together in this library. This was a free event, and I like to think that we shared a really special time with one another throughout the day. So libraries to me are palaces for the people, because they're a place to be together, read books, play video games, attend programs, learn about our communities, learn about our lives, meet other people, find resources that help our lives, whether you're somebody looking for a job or somebody looking for homework help. A place to feel less lonely. And that's the key, is Americans are so lonely because we've shut ourselves away from events like comics festivals that are free at the library, being out together in a park, or we only do it when there are people like us in those parks, which can be important, but also can continue big problems in our society. We learn to share spaces with people unlike ourselves, and so much more. And so I encourage you, if you don't have a library card, to get a library card, but also go to the public library as much as you can, as a kid, as a teen, when you're a grown-up, if you become a parent, as a grandparent, whether you're living with others or not, and also tell other people how important libraries are to you. and ask your parents or your caregivers or whoever you know to also have them tell people how important it is, because we can't let these palaces of the people go away, because they are truly unique. They're the only places in our country where you can go for free and have these kinds of experiences. And maybe you'll see a skeleton drummer there one day, and it'll be me reading my book. So that is, libraries are where democracy can become what it has always promised, but never achieved. So we got to fight for them. That is my presentation. Thank you so much. There's that little guy again.
Thank you so much. I'm so inspired, and I'm sure everyone else is too. I loved it. It was full of ideas and history, and I've learned so much about the White House and just about libraries. And thank you so much for joining us. Thank you everyone for taking time to be here today. The recording of today's presentation will be on the AB Kids website soon, along with additional information. Don't forget to register for the rest of the series. We have 2 more left in the series, and we would love to see you there. And there's a lot of other Augusta Baker programming as well that you can register for. We hope to see you next time, and we hope you have the best rest of your day. Thank you for being here. Bye.
Bye.